Welcome back to my channel, everyone, and today is a deep dive character analysis about Cassie from Euphoria. I've already talked about Maddy in detail because she was really lacking videos about her on the internet, but you guys asked for Cassie, so here we are. I don't love what they did with Cassie in season 2. If you compare how she was in both seasons, I definitely have a soft spot for season 1 Cassie, and I want to talk about why that is. Now, there aren't any right or wrongs in this discussion. I'm not going to say like if you disagree that you're wrong, but this is why I wasn't happy with where they took Cassie's character in season 2. I wouldn't go as far as to call it complete character assassination, but they really did her dirty and they had no respect. They changed her from a desperate yet well-rounded and sweet character into a complete pick-me girl, I guess, as people would call it. I don't really like that term, to be honest, but that's kind of how she was being. The writer, Sam, definitely moved Cassie away from being complicated and real to having these really extreme qualities, with her being really over-emotional and all over the place. As I've seen, the opinion around Cassie is very divided. People tend to love her or hate her. So I'm gonna try and look at both sides of the discussion, but I really used to like Cassie and it makes me sad. In season 1, I just thought she was such a cool character. I thought she had some really cute, fun, innocent sides, and you could see how she really did just want to be loved, and it put her in some messy situations that so many girls can relate to, where you're like, oh man, where she's so desperate for male validation and she just completely loses her identity in her relationships. But again, she can be fun, she can be sweet. And then in season 2, especially with the love triangle with her and Nate and Maddy, everything was just a complete disaster, and she's whinging, wailing, not taking responsibility. She's she's having a relationship with her best friend's abusive ex-boyfriend, and the whole thing is just a shambles. Why did she suddenly become so obsessed with Nate? She could become obsessed with any guy. Why him? And why was it so easy for her to just forget about McKay, who she'd previously been dating? I don't think that female characters have to be perfect all the time or have this amazing cookie cutter image. Like, I understand they're gonna make mistakes and mess up, and this villain arc could be an interesting thing for her, taking her down a darker path. But what I'm really hoping is that in season 3, they can kind of fix it, I guess, by making it part of her character arc and having her learn and come back to herself again. But I really hope that in season 3, the downward spiral doesn't just continue. An important thing to look at is Cassie's childhood and how that makes her who she is, not as a justification for her behavior, but just for context, and so you understand why she does the things that she does. She has a lot of trauma from her childhood because her mum is useless, I mean funny, but very neglectful, and her father really abandoned her and turned to addiction. And he'd kind of use Cassie. He'd act like she was special to him, but actually he was just trying to get something from her. In that way, it makes more sense as to why she falls for Nate, because he looks a bit like her father. But you can really see how Cassie views her dad through rose-tinted glasses in a way, at least when she was a kid. I remember there was this scene where their dad was being super weird and told them to get in the car, and Cassie was like, come on Lexi, let's just go, let's get in the car, because she wants to please her father. And Lexi's more skeptical, like, oh, I don't know about this is kind of dodgy. So it shows that they're viewing their experience of childhood differently, and that really parallels later in season 2 when Nate says to Cassie, do you want me to drive you? And he gets her in his car, and again she just goes along with it, which shows her issue with, I guess, saying no. In the same way that her dad was using her and not really being there for her, Nate is the same. She needs to prove herself to Nate in the same way that she was trying to prove herself to her dad of being worthy of love. If I had to try and unpack why on earth she started dating Nate, even though she knew that he had been with Maddy, it's hard to say exactly, because honestly it wasn't made that clear, but I would say she starts to like Nate a bit and they hook up, but what really solidifies her need to be with him and look after him is when he gets beat up and you see her terrified, rushing him to the hospital. And maybe that was her thinking, I can save him, I can fix him, because her dad had an accident that put him in hospital as well. And especially because Nate had always disliked her and talked down to her, maybe this feels like a challenge to Cassie, because if she can get Nate to love her, then that would be like proving herself. These issues with her dad dad come into every single one of her romantic relationships. Like when they say she fell in love with every boy she ever dated, it's true. It's not even love, it's just this idea of becoming obsessed with them, and maybe some limerence, like imagining what they're like, and wishful thinking that doesn't live up to the actual reality. You see this scene in season 2 when her and Nate are in a bad place, and so she gets angry and cries and then starts hitting him. It's quite pathetic, I'm gonna be honest. I felt kind of bad for her. I was like, Cassie, it's not hurting him, just stop. I guess to release her frustrations, I don't know, it was very odd. He doesn't hit her back, and everyone was like, oh my god, I knew he loved her, he doesn't hit her back. Guys, literally shut up, the bar is so low. Seriously, don't. Can you imagine? Oh, at least he doesn't hit her like he strangled Maddy. What a step up. No thank you. Anyway, he doesn't hit her back, but he sort of grabs onto her and tries to hug her, and she keeps hitting him, but then she gives in to the hug. But I suppose it was the show's way of saying that as much as she resents men and she's got all this anger, she also needs their approval and their love. Because of these unresolved issues she has with her dad, this girl seriously needs to go to therapy in season 3, by the way, but it's led her into a lot of relationships where she wasn't being fully validated or abandoned, because she's not really picking the guy according to whether she likes them and whether she finds them attractive, but it's more based on trying to get them to like her, which is obviously, when you fall into that rabbit hole, there's no way of getting out of it. But in season 1, she was still really insecure, cripplingly so, and she was trying to get this dude McKay to like her, and he genuinely had feelings for her 100%. Like when he said, you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, etc., I genuinely think he meant it and he wanted to date her. But he did not treat her well, and he was really disrespectful towards her, partly because of the way he was raised and his environment, but he was quite unkind at multiple points. And at one point, even when they were having sex, he got really like rough and it wasn't consensual, and all that was terrible. She tries to offer him sex as a way of making him feel better, and he's like, ugh, why do you have to make everything so sexual? And I understand that he was annoyed because he wanted to talk and she was there trying to do something else, and he was like, no, are you even listening to me? But I think the way he worded it was quite upsetting, and you could tell how much it bugged her. And this again is Cassie's thing, where she thinks her only value is her physical appearance, so the only way she can help or make a guy feel better is by offering her body. I don't know, people don't really talk about him because Nate's so bad, he overshadows everyone else, but McKay could be really rude, and also he was not proud to have Cassie as his girlfriend and wanted her to be like his dirty little secret. And again, she wasn't valuing herself in that relationship, because a big part of Cassie's character is thinking that her only value is in her physical appearance, and this was an aspect of her personality I thought was so well written in season 1 and just really good. So I'm sad that they made her like this cartoon character in season 2, because honestly, I liked her as she was in season 1. She didn't really need changing, do you know what I mean? Like, she was already really well formed, but she used to ice skate a lot when she was younger, and then she gave that up, which shows that she's losing her identity, because that was the one thing she was praised for that had nothing to do with her looks. It was just a genuine skill. And now she's not doing it anymore. She was sexualized from a young age, and when she hit puberty, suddenly people were making all these really weird comments about her body, and she's always being told how attractive she is, and so she started feeling this real pressure to like live up to that. Again, this was part of Cassie's season 1 storyline that I just found so powerful. I know so many girls can relate to it, especially because I don't have Cassie's exact body type. I'd say she's more of like an inverted triangle. We have similar body types, but not the exact same. But we both have very big boobs, and I remember feeling that same sense of people being weird around my boobs and stuff when I was younger. And I know Sydney Sweeney said she's been sexualized since high school because of the fact that she had boobs, etc. So I could also really resonate with that. There's definitely in society a lot of expectations, like you should behave this way because you have boobs, or you just put on literally a t-shirt and because of your boobs it looks like you're trying to make it sexy or something, or you're looking for attention, but it's literally the way the top sits and the girls are just there, they want to be seen. And sometimes you can hide them, like in a top like this, yeah, okay, but the rest of the time, not so much. They're there, you can't miss them. Oh, it was just so upsetting. That comment that dude made when Cassie was kind of flirting with him in season 1 and leading him on a bit, just having some fun. I don't think she really had an intention of getting with him, but she was just, I don't know, she was feeling low. She was being an idiot, as many of us do when we're teenagers. And then he made this comment like, man, you're so stupid, you're a dumb bitch, and if you think any guy has any interest in you beyond sleeping with you, then you're stupid. And I'm gonna be honest with you because no one else will, and this is the truth. And it was just probably the most awful thing you could say to someone, like genuinely so hurtful. And I was just like, oh, no, that's so mean. Like, I understand he felt like she'd been leading him on. Just leave, just go. Don't stand there and say that to her. And the fact that people were justifying him saying that and being like, oh, but she was being rude. Like, no, that's just victim blaming her. No one should speak to you like that. It's just atrocious. And especially considering Cassie's upbringing, she already has this belief that her only value is her body. So to have someone say that to her is just, ugh. And again, it's that sexual coercion, almost pressurizing her, maybe trying to guilt trip her or make her feel bad. And the whole thing is absolutely repulsive and way more common than people think. Obviously, the show's making this commentary like sexualizing women is bad, or this is how dangerous it is to be sexualized from a young age. And that's the moral of the story, I suppose. Yet at points it feels like the show is sexualizing Cassie a little bit, which is very odd because it goes against the whole message and point of the story. For instance, how often we see her topless, I just don't think that's necessary. I mean, there was one scene with McKay, I think, where they were about to sleep together or had just slept together, and she looks self-conscious and she's kind of covering her chest. And I thought that was quite good because it shows her insecurity. So it was there for a reason, to show that she wasn't really fully comfortable with what was going on. But at other points I was like, does this need to be here? Like, for instance, when Cassie's nudes and things are leaked around, we sort of saw snapshots of the nudes and I was like, that's so unnecessary. We don't need to see them. You could just have the guys looking at their phone and being like, oh my God. And the male gaze is when we see women portrayed on film in like a voyeuristic or sexual way, often to appeal to the male viewers. Like when Cassie comes down the stairs in season 2 in her pink swimsuit and the camera kind of pans over her body a bit. Not necessary, we didn't need that. And here's the thing, nudity can be a really important storytelling technique to show something about the character's mindset, or maybe show that they're feeling vulnerable, or just make it more realistic overall. But sometimes it's just there to add shock value or keep people watching. In this show, I personally don't love the nudity and sex. I think it's a bit much. And there is a problem in TV and film when they get adult actors to play teenagers to avoid the restraints of child labor laws on set, because if you have an actual teenager on set, there's certain rules about how they're meant to be treated, what kind of scenes they can do, how long they're meant to be on set for, and it complicates things more. So they just hire adult actors. Like the actors in Euphoria are at least like 23 or even like 29, but they're playing these teenagers, and that's when it starts to get into icky territory, because I'm totally cool with seeing Sydney Sweeney topless or something. She's a grown woman, she can do what she wants, but what's weird about it is that she's meant to be a teenager. I don't want to see a teenager topless, that's weird. And so it opens teen characters up to being sexualized because it's adult actors playing them. Also, a lot of Cassie's nude scenes do seem quite removed from the viewer's experience because we often don't know what's actually going on in her head at the time. Our ability to empathize with her is really limited in season 2. In season 1, she's a very empathetic character. There's a lot of pathos there for the audience. And in season 2, because she's such a train wreck, she's not taking responsibility. She's sleeping with her best friend's ex, all this. Your ability to like her is made very difficult. It was really hard to like Cassie. I didn't feel that same way with the depiction of Rue's drug struggles, for example. I thought that was very touching and you could really see her pain, but with Cassie, she's just doing things and you don't really know why. Obviously, when it comes to writing lovesick teenage girls, Sam doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, how could he? He's not a teenage girl. He's never been a teenage girl. In season 1, I still didn't love the nudity, but I felt like it served more of a purpose. Whereas in season 2, I was like, oh, okay, it's a bit weird. In season 2, there is scenes of Cassie topless or whatever, but it doesn't seem like it's there to really give insight into her character or show her issues with her self-worth and how she's just going along with stuff to please guys. One scene I didn't think was that necessary was in season 2 in like episode 1. It's when they're hooking up in the bathroom for the first time and Nate's fully clothed, keep in mind, and then Cassie's like got her dress pulled down so her boobs are out, and then Maddy's knocking at the door and she's like, what's going on? So Cassie's there crying with just just her boobs there, and I was like, this is humiliating. Not only humiliating her, but also kind of dehumanizing her. There are some good things that Euphoria does when it comes to sex scenes and things, like showing power imbalances. Also, I like that they had an intimacy coordinator on set. That makes everything so much safer, and I can't believe we haven't always had intimacy coordinators. Like, that's insane to me that this is a more recent thing. What the hell's going on? In season 2, another thing that pissed me off is no one talks about how horrendous Cassie's family is when it comes to mental health support and being there for her. Like, her mum should take her side simply because Cassie's her daughter and try and help her sort things out. But instead, she's just making fun of Cassie and kind of yelling at her. And to be fair, I get that Cassie was being really annoying, but there were points where you could clearly see that Cassie was actually, I'm not even exaggerating, having a mental breakdown, and her family was laughing at her, being like, oh, Cassie, shut up. Cassie even said something about wanting to cut herself. Her mum said, if you're going to self-harm, a corkscrew isn't going to cut it. Is that meant to be funny? Because that's just actually really bad. No wonder Cassie's such a mess. So I'm going to take a look now at Cassie in season 1 and then move on to season 2, so you get an idea of how her character changed and why I preferred her in season 1. Cassie is a very sympathetic character, and part of the reason is because she's so disrespected by mainly the boys in her life. Even boys she's not dating, there's this culture in the school of making fun of Cassie and calling her a whore. I don't get it. Seriously, what did she do? And I do think a big part of that is down to her body type and them assuming she's really sexual. Let's say a girl's fat-chested, people assume that they can't be sexy or whatever. It's really toxic. Cassie is so caught up in her own, I guess, trauma, her own fear about everything, that when McKay is assaulted by these guys like charge in on them and like attack him, she's not there for him. Like, he goes and cries in the bathroom by himself and she just is not present, or maybe she's just actually not engaged with what's going on because she's choosing not to be, but because she's so in her own head about stuff, when it comes to actually being a friend for other people, she's not there. Cassie's trying to get these guys to like her, which just results in them being really disrespectful and her feeling like shit about herself. And so the first season ends with Cassie swearing off boys for a while and saying she's just going to try and be alone. So it suggests that she'll go in this journey of self-discovery maybe, or self-improvement. And you can see it in the way she's dressed, because she's wearing pink, which is a happier color, whereas earlier in the show, Cassie wore blue a lot, which showed her sadness and everything. But she often wears a lot of like very innocent colors anyway, because she's actually quite an innocent person. She's quite childish around things and ignorant. She wears pastel colors a lot, and her outfits are often more simplistic, which to me shows how she doesn't always want to stand out, and she kind of wants to look like the girl next door. With whatever guy she dated, she could morph herself into what he wanted her to be. When Maddy and Cassie are rushing Nate to the hospital, with the camera angles, the camera focuses on the girl's feet as they're running. Cassie's wearing these kitten heels and she's tripping over her own feet, whereas Maddy is walking, well, striding, I guess, quite boldly in her shoes. Cassie in season 1 had her issues, 100%. Sometimes she was stupid, but she put herself in so many situations where she was publicly humiliated that it was impossible to not feel like absolutely terrible for her, especially with the way the guys at the school were making fun of her and calling her a whore and sharing around nudes of her or whatever. It's just really traumatic. But in season 2, it wasn't so good. But to be honest, it wasn't so great. Cassie became a lot more self-centered and whinging, whining, and she performs the most insane of stunts to try and get even a bit of Nate's attention, which was truly beyond pathetic. Now, I get that he's attractive, I get that they have way more chemistry than him and Maddy did, at least in my opinion, but what bothered me is that we don't really understand like why she would do something so awful as to hook up with Nate. Like, she's friends with Maddy, right? Maddy's always been a good friend. Why on earth would she do that? They don't give us enough of her headspace to show that, because if they really showed how low she was right as she started dating Nate, I think we would have way more sympathy for her, because we would understand what led her to that decision. Cassie would do absolutely anything for Nate. After that first night they hook up, they keep seeing each other, and she's just desperate to be with him, even if it means throwing her own friend under the bus, potentially losing Maddy, because she knows how pissed off Maddy would be, especially because of the way Nate treated Maddy in the relationship. She knows there's something wrong with him, which makes it even worse because she's going into it anyway. But that shows that male validation is so important to her, and the patriarchy has it so instilled in us that male feelings are so important, which is often why women get in their heads like, why isn't he asking me out? Does he like me? We get so upset when the guy doesn't choose us or whatever, because we think we need them to. And that's why she spends 3 hours getting ready in the morning, because everything she's doing is catering herself to the male gaze. And then she's justifying it to herself in the mirror as she's getting ready, saying she wanted to take some time for herself. Even though she knows deep down she's not doing it for herself, she's doing it for him. Watching her get ready in the morning doing this routine, it was a very well done montage, but it's almost making fun of her, like, hey, let's watch this pretty girl go boy crazy. The whole getting ready thing for Nate, I don't get it personally. It seems like a big character inconsistency. When other guys in the past have kind of ignored her, she gets bored really easily and she's like, oh, forget it, screw you. And then she goes to try and flirt with another guy immediately. And that's been her pattern of behavior in the past. So it was odd that she kept like going towards him when he was pulling away. I understand why people really hate Cassie's guts in season 2, because it's just so wrong to date someone else's horrible ex. Like, not just a nice ex, a horrible ex. And I get that Cassie deserves to be criticized and she needs to take responsibility 100%. Like, absolutely, she's a mess. And her excuse will only take her so far until she's just self-victimizing. Yes, but no one talks about Nate and how horrendous his behavior was. Like, no one mentions how wrong it was for him to date Cassie for so many reasons. Cassie's McKay's ex and he still dates Cassie. The fact that he knew how mad Maddy would be and he did it anyway, and just so much. And the way he treated Cassie was not good. He was love bombing her and then pulling away. And then whenever she tried to leave, he'd be like, wait, I love you. And he makes her feel pressurized to stay in the relationship by saying, if Maddy finds out, she'll kill you, which makes Cassie so scared to communicate with Maddy about what's going on, and the whole thing was so wrong. I don't like though how we didn't get enough insight into Cassie's guilt about what she was doing. We never see her sitting in front of her phone for hours, rewriting a message to Maddy and then deleting it and thinking, should I call her now and tell her, or any of that internal conflict. We don't see her looking through old photo albums of them together and being like, man, what am I doing? Or just those little moments they could have added in, they didn't, which again takes away from our ability to sympathize with her. The makeup artist from the show said that she starts shifting Cassie's makeup in season 2 to resembling Jules, and Cassie's hair is then straighter like Jules, which shows how Cassie is completely losing her sense of self. Like, she thinks Nate might like straight hair, so I'll do that. And as the makeup artist said, Cassie's foundation and everything makes her look very pasty, almost like she's unwell. She looks beautiful but sterile, as if she's been cooped up in Nate's house for way too long, and so she's losing her color. And because she's going crazy all the time, crying and yelling at people and flaring up and getting super defensive, unfortunately it totally plays into the crazy hot girl trope. I don't know if that's the trope's name, but I'm going with it. You know how society loves to see a beautiful woman have a mental breakdown and go off the walls and then start smoking and shave off all her hair? Like, look at how we view celebrities in the media, like Britney Spears. We're like, oh my god. We take this sick joy in seeing a beautiful, successful woman crumble. It's really twisted. Or seeing them get obsessed with this boy and just go crazy. I guess because it caters to the male ego, like, this super hot girl is obsessed with me and it makes me feel great about myself. You can see that with how defensive Cassie's getting and how she's not being grounded about it at all or level-headed. She's not taking responsibility, and she's even comparing her situation to Rue's and saying, I've had a hard life too. Why is Rue's life harder than mine? So annoying, literally. And then she tries to get out of being exposed for exposing Rue for being a drug addict, which was just a really low move and shows again that she's not herself. And then she's constantly defending her actions by saying to her mum and sister, Maddy and Nate were broken up when I got with him. They were broken up for like 3 weeks, so it's fine, okay? I'm not a slut. Like, I did the right thing. And I don't like how the narrative is then, as a result, twisting her into this villain, because there are so many reasons as to why Cassie might feel like this, which are actually really valid, but we're not being shown them. For example, at the end of season 1, Cassie had an abortion. Huge deal. Could be very upsetting. She was kind of forced to. And we just are never hearing about it again. Like, that's it, we move on. What the hell? That could really give you a lot of guilt or shame or being upset, whatever. It would affect every single person differently. Surely that would have haunted her a bit. Or what about having her nudes and things like that leaked around? That could scar you for life. Why are we not talking about the ramifications of that? So she's constantly humiliating herself. She's doing the most ridiculous things, like getting up on stage, embarrassing herself, as if anyone would do that. No person would do that. So it's making her into this cartoon character for the audience to make fun of. And then her family is saying she's pathetic. Lexi is obviously so jealous of her sister, even though Cassie's never really like been a bad sister. And Lexi completely humiliates her in the school play and exposes her. What the hell was that? I love Lexi, but no. And we have to take into account how manipulative Nate is. It's not like he's this nice guy. He was totally taking advantage of Cassie's weaknesses. And yeah, he genuinely in some ways liked the idea of having a future with her, and you could see him being like, oh, imagine dating her, blah, blah, blah. But in all seriousness, even though maybe he had that little fantasy in the back of his mind, overall, he doesn't really want her. He's just trying to use her to get back at Maddy. And why would he love her? Like, no offense, but she's such a pushover. It's not like he has to earn her love. She'll just kind of be there, and no matter how shit he treats her, she'll stick around, which is hardly an attractive quality. And I just think there's not enough sympathy given to Cassie because she's so much framed as a villain in season 2. And I understand that she's the kind of person that could easily become a villain. It makes sense given her childhood and all this, but I don't love it. I don't love her self-victimizing and her lack of awareness. I don't like how we're not reminded to kind of sympathize with her and feel bad like we were in season 1. And it's so sad because Cassie ultimately is someone who just hates herself. Like, even in the school play, she gets up on stage and she doesn't like attack Lexi or Nate or someone where maybe it would make more sense as to why she's angry at them. She goes and attacks the girl who's playing the role of Cassie on stage, which means that symbolically she's fighting herself and hating herself. And is there anything more sad than that? I don't think so. And it's so bizarre because there are so many scenes that give Cal and Nate, the two villains of the show, way more sympathy than Cassie. Like when you see Nate breaking down and crying after fighting his dad, and these things that make you go like, oh, that's kind of sad, or you get a perspective on their childhood and you're like, oh, just the way they do it, I feel like is actually really effective in understanding how they became villains. And it was definitely more effective than how they did it with Cassie, because their way of doing it seems to just be through kind of embarrassing her. Basically, Cassie needs therapy is my summary, and there's actually nothing really funny about that. And to be fair, like some of the scenes where she was trying to please Nate, I'm not gonna lie, they were hilarious. Like when she dressed up as Maddy, kind of funny, but you have to acknowledge that it's coming from a place that's genuinely so disturbing. Like, she is absolutely losing herself. She actually needs intervention and help. And if people can't see that, and if her own family can't see that, then that's really sad. So thanks so much for watching, guys. And I'll link my other Euphoria videos down in the description. They're some of my favorites on my channel. I think they're just really good, if I can say so myself. Like, they're really good. So go watch them. And if you want to know what I'm wearing on my face, the link will be in the description. I've done some Euphoria inspired makeup today, actually, which I'm kind of obsessed with. Not gonna lie. I will see you guys for the next video.